So we've made it to the last session of the day. Yay. So I am super excited to have Danielle here today. A couple of reminders before we close out for the day. Don't forget to do your sketch form if you need sketches. That was emailed out. If you didn't get it, email Patrick, Kelly, myself. We can all get that to you. I'm planning to do the sketch form today because I know I will forget it, but it is due by November 8th. You'll also get recordings from the presentations. I know there's some that I missed as I was in other presentations, so you'll be able to go and watch other ones that you missed as well. So we encourage you to be on camera so we can create a community of learning, and also to put any questions that you have into the chat, and Danielle will answer them at the end. Please also stay muted unless you're presenting or asking a question. And there's also an area where you can go back and rate all the sessions. We're asking everybody to go rate them so that we have a better idea for next year's conference, which hopefully will be in person, but you never know. So please rate those either way, in person, online. It helps us out with who to ask to present again as well. So with that, I'd like to introduce Danielle Barrett and her presentation, Recruit the Employer.
Thank you so much, Whitney. And thank you everybody for joining the last session of the McKay Conference. My name is Danielle Barrett. I'm the career navigator from Troy Continuing Education. And I have a background in human resource management, client relations, and workforce education partnerships within the tuition management industry. So most of my work has been done in corporations. I recently came to Troy Continuing Education earlier this year. And I also am a member of the Society of Human Resource Management, which is referred to as SHRM. So as we begin, I'd like to thank McKay for putting on such a wonderful conference. It's been so inspiring and informative. So I hope you find this presentation of value. It's called Recruit the Employer, Strategies to Secure an Interview via a Compelling Resume. So we're going to talk through this agenda today. I'm really excited to be able to present this information. It's designed in mind to help our adult students transition to employment. And how can we help position them in their job search process, set them up for success, and help them unlock employment opportunities. So, we're going to talk about thinking like the employer and what do those employers want. We'll talk about applicant tracking systems and the mechanics behind those. And we'll get into a resume strategy with some keywords. And we'll give some job application tips, and then we're going to round out the presentation talking about the power of networking and building your program employer connections. So initially, our candidates often think about their needs, right? It's human nature, what they need, what are their desires. But let's reframe that a little bit. Let's reframe the candidate's mindset. Our candidates are adult students who are exiting to employment. And so let's indicate how can they think like the recruiter. So we need to kind of think on the other side of the equation, which we don't often do. So in order to recruit the employer, we need to know a little bit about recruiters and what they do and the impact that they make within organizations. So they have typical responsibilities where they're reviewing resumes, calling candidates directly to set up interviews, giving them guidance on their organization, talking with those hiring managers, as well as doing the nice part of the job is extending those job offers. So an applicant, that job offer is a life-changing event. And for the company, the right person is the key to success, or it could be a really costly hiring error. And so that recruiter manages both expectations between the candidate and the hiring manager. So the profession can be really dynamic and impactful, and they can change people's lives. It's really exciting. But at the same time, the job is highly competitive or highly repetitive, and it has high burnout. It can be really stressful. Some people thrive in this role for their entire careers, while others see it as a means to move up in the HR ecosystem. So a recruiter at any time, it just depends on the size of the organization. They can have 15 to 20 job recs open at a time that they're working. There are often tons of performance metrics that their employer is looking at. They rate their performance as a recruiter, as well as how fast they're filling jobs. Time to fill rate is just an example of that. When that job opens to the time it's filled, how many days is that? How can they shrink that amount of time? Because it's going to save them money. It's going to make that hiring manager more productive. Compensation, they're going to be looking at, if they're an in-house recruiter for the actual organization, they're going to be typically a salaried employee, just as a normal compensation model. But if we're talking staffing firms or contract houses, it's a little bit more competitive, and there's some commission that they work off of within those models. But they're perpetually networking and sourcing candidates. It's just part of the environment for this position, because they have to please their customers. That external customer is the candidate, and that internal customer is the hiring manager. And so, to answer that question, what do employers want? We really need to think about the hiring manager here, and they're the critical component in this hiring process. The majority of them want relevant experience, specific accomplishments, and a customized resume. And we're going to talk about those as we move on through the presentation. I also listed from Indeed.com 9 qualities of a good employee, right? These are those soft skills. If you happen to be in Josh Davies' amazing keynote address yesterday, he coined some of these qualities as personal effective competencies, and I really liked that. I've bolded confidence and self-awareness. I think these are really important qualities for our adult students to gain. And as adult educators, I think that we do a good job, giving them confidence and self-awareness. As they move into that interview process, we need to make sure that they are able to respond to some self-awareness questions. What are their strengths and weaknesses? Sometimes that comes with age and wisdom, right? So sometimes they just don't understand what that looks like. So we can bring that to the forefront and have those discussions with them so they can be successful as they exit to the labor market. So, adults, they're so busy taking care of all these different needs, right? When they are looking for a job, there are some really basic strategies to recruit that recruiter and make that recruiter's job easier. So I'm going to go over some basic ones that I've listed here on the screen. When they are looking for a job and they're actively looking, we want to make sure that they have a professional email address set up. Typically that reflects their full name. That's going to help the recruiter search their email box and find that person when they need to find their resume. If it's not their name, like a Sunshine 53, they're not going to remember that email address to pull it up. So that's a helpful tip. We want to make sure that new email address is added to account is added to all their devices. If they have a phone and an iPad, we want to make sure that they add it to every device and add that professional email signature per device as well. That's super helpful for recruiter. If they're going to call a candidate, a repetitive call, a second interview perhaps, and they're looking at an email and there's not a professional signature where it has their phone number, then, they have to go and look that up and so forth. So it just really sets up the recruiter for success. Again, they're going to need a cell phone voicemail box, their voicemail box set up. I think Claudia Stevens mentioned in her presentation yesterday the importance of this as well. We don't want them to miss an opportunity. So make sure that voicemail box is set up. And then that greeting is professional, stating their first and last name and a phone number. And and making sure the voicemail is not full, right? I'm sort of guilty of that. I don't always clear out my voicemail box. But as you're actively job searching, our adult students, we want to make sure that they are aware of those strategies. Before I moved on to the LinkedIn bullet, I want to talk about the information on the right-hand side of the screen, the COVID-19 vaccination status information. So this is emerging territory. SHRM has published an article in regards to COVID-19 vaccination status. And they had noted that there was a key finding from resumebuilder.com, put out a survey to 1,250 hiring managers. And these were the key findings. This is nationwide, it's not Michigan. The key findings were 33% of hiring managers are automatically eliminating resumes that don't include the vaccination status. Wow, new information. Almost 70% of them are more likely to hire somebody who's already has that vaccination designation. And as of August 2021, 63% of the companies nationwide are mandating this. So if we have an adult candidate who is looking to move into the medical field, and they have a vaccination status, we might want to talk about including that on their resume. It might help them secure that interview. But let's move on to the last bullet point. Creating a LinkedIn profile to reflect the resume is always encouraged. I know that our population sometimes do not have LinkedIn profiles. 80% of recruiters are looking at LinkedIn profiles. So if we can get them to that level, it's important. And if we can do that, we want it to reflect their resume so it is accurate. They will notice discrepancies between a resume and a LinkedIn profile. They'll feel it is part of the attention to detail, right? And that's really important when they're looking for someone to work for their company. LinkedIn just added a new feature. I'm really excited about this feature. It's really simple. It's called a name pronunciation feature. And so here's a snapshot of part of my LinkedIn profile. And you can see next to my name, Danielle Barrett, there is a speaker icon. And so now we have the ability to record our names. I encourage all of our adult candidates who are looking for jobs to do this. I encourage all of us as employees to do it as well. There was a recent survey from Name Coach who surveyed about 1,000 employees, and they found that 74% said they struggled with correctly pronouncing names at work, right? 22% said that they didn't introduce another person because they didn't know how to pronounce their name. And 16% said they didn't talk to a coworker. They avoided the coworker because they didn't want to have that awkward interaction. So as we think about this from an employment standpoint, we want to set that recruiter up for success. They might come to the LinkedIn profile before the interview and look at the name, right? And if we have them set up with this pronunciation feature, it's wonderful. And I'll just give you a sample. I recorded mine. Danielle Barrett. Right? So really nice, simple. It's just so simple and thoughtful. So wanted to mention that. That's a new feature. So now let's move into applicant tracking systems and the mechanics behind them. And Whitney, if you could help me, we have a poll that everybody had when they came in looking for the results of everyone's knowledge of applicant tracking systems.
Yep, so 0 people were extremely knowledgeable. About 7% were moderately knowledgeable, 19% slightly knowledgeable, and 74% said, "What is an ATS?" That was me. Also.
Yes, so throughout the presentation, I will be referring to it as an ATS, but let me tell you what it is. I'm so excited to present this information to you. It's so valuable for our adult students. When we want to unlock employment opportunities for them, I want to arm you with information of how the industry works. So an applicant tracking system is simply a software program. It allows the recruiters to develop and execute a more efficient workflow. It does have payroll and benefits on some of these sophisticated ATSs attached to it, but for our purposes, we're just going to talk about the hiring process. So it allows that organization to develop a consistent and engaging recruitment process. It strengthens their branding, and it attracts and engages more candidates, which they want. And essentially, it's helping that organization recruit at scale. So they've solved recruiting at scale through this process, but it doesn't help candidates when they don't know how to navigate an ATS system. So when a candidate applies for a job online, those resumes are not going to a human. They are going through the software program before it gets to recruiter or hiring manager. That ATS is processing it. All that AI is processing it. So it acts as this electronic gatekeeper for employers and hiring managers. So let's look at that candidate experience. You know, that job gets posted or created, and then it gets posted on all these online job boards. And that's when candidates actively can go look for that information and apply to the jobs that they're interested in. And then those applications are screened and ranked. They are ranked by an ATS system. And then the ones that make it through this gate, which is my straight line between after the ATS, is those potentially will move on to the interview process. And then the best ones out of that pool potentially could be hired. So let's dive deeper into these applications that are being screened and ranked by an ATS and blocked by that gatekeeper. So this slide is one of my favorites. It's so impactful. An ATS is going to parse that resume into different categories and scan for specific keywords. And it's going to rank the candidates to determine if an application should be passed along to the recruiter. And as we move into this data, you know, these large companies are obtaining up to 75,000 applications per week. Oh my goodness, humans can't process that. It is impossible because they're recruiting at scale. They're looking for the best talent. You know, we're talking from entry level higher, right? So this is entry level. And when we really break that down, 250 to 600 applications per position. Oh my goodness, the competition is unreal. Think about that. I have a visual. Here's a ream of paper, 500 sheets. How do we get to the top? Because only those 4 or 6 candidates who get the top are going to receive the interview. So we need to know how to navigate these ATS systems. I was on a webinar with Oakland County Michigan Works, and it was mentioned that Oakland University mentioned that one of their jobs had 600 people apply for that. 600. So I want to arm you with this information so we can help our adult candidates navigate through this process. So let's talk a little bit more about this applicant tracking system. You know, we're looking at these big companies who are using this. 98% of Fortune 500 companies are doing this. You know, there's a talent war out there, and so they are looking, you know, for the best talent, and they use ATS vendors, providers to help manage this. And there's probably over 60 different providers. But SHRM has provided a really nice comparison slide of all of the vendors. I pulled the top 4 that I often see: Oracle, Taleo, Paycor, SuccessFactors, and Workday. And these are like the sales features for each of the tracking systems. And I just highlighted some key points. I just want to show you the power behind these systems. They can automate job postings. They are intelligent digital assistants answering candidate questions and providing guided experiences. They track source quality. If they post a job posting on Indeed.com and on LinkedIn, which one is giving them the better return on investment? Candidate assessments can move through this. Text-based candidate communication. You know, I apply for a lot of the jobs that I help candidates apply for, so I can take a look at the application. I want to see the applicant tracking system. So I get texts from CVS and Amazon daily because they have a text-based candidate communication feature. They can be very sophisticated and embed interview scheduling and video interview tools. After those interviews, it can collect post-interview feedback and score them internally. Offering automated jobs with e-signature at scale. They can track time to hire. We briefly talked about that as the recruiters, one of the recruiters' metrics. Schedule, let's see here, machine learning gleans skills and resumes and recommends matching opportunities. That's artificial intelligence parsing these resumes and matching them to other opportunities. So in terms of the last one, I bolded the last point, and I really want you to see this. Points-based leaderboard encourages employee referrals of candidates. This is huge. So what this means is that organizations perhaps could have an employee referral system. And if a candidate finds an employee that works at a company, that employee can turn in that resume as an employee referral, and they go into a leaderboard. And if that applicant got hired after a certain percentage of time, they potentially could receive a bonus, because companies really want to use their employee referral network over their external job sourcing. Okay, so that's really important. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So, I touched on the 4 popular ATS systems. How do you know which company uses which? When you're looking at the job posting online, sometimes you can identify it in the URL or in the copyright. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's whitelisted and the company doesn't want you to know. And why do you want to know this? Well, let's say the candidate really had their heart set on a specific company. You can research the provider online and you might be able to find out some information. An example of that is, Beaumont Hospital. I looked at one of their job applications. I could tell that they use a company called HealthSource. I went to HealthSource's website. I was able to look at on-demand webinars. I was able to determine that HealthSource is one of the vendors, right? So they are industry thought leaders. And so they collect their clients' data across these health providers, and they collect it and they present it to their clients. So their clients can understand industry market data. And it's also available as their sales tool feature, right? So I, as a public, can go on and listen to some of it. And I was able to determine, based on their public data, that 27% of healthcare jobs in IT and pharmacy were difficult to fill, and they take about 4 months to fill those roles. So that might be good information for a candidate, right? If they're not getting hired right away, it just takes a while within those internal job applications. So now let's turn it over to some resume strategies, building a compelling resume to recruit the recruiter and secure the interview, because essentially we need to beat that ATS. How do we get to the top of that system? So I've laid out a number of strategies. Some of these you probably are familiar with. We want to see standard section headings, because that ATS is going to parse it into section headings potentially. So a summary, education, certifications, competency and skills, work experience, potentially volunteer work, and professional organizations, if they hold those, should be on there as well. Attention to detail. This is so important. It sounds so basic, but it really is important. They need to ensure that the resume has a consistent look and feel. All the headings need to be the same size. The entire resume needs to be the same font. We don't want content in the headers and footers. We don't want icons. We don't want text boxes. We don't want accidental spaces. We don't want tables. ATSs can't read text boxes. That data just disappears in certain ATSs. So we want to avoid as much as possible. And obviously proofreading, right? That's just a basic tool, but I can tell you lots of resumes still don't pass that test. Moving on to articulating specific work accomplishments. This is really huge. I'm excited to talk about this. Hiring managers are looking for an achiever pattern, right? When they're looking to bring somebody on in their role, they want to make sure someone can be successful. We're talking about our population of adult education students, right? So, potentially maybe they already have a job, and maybe they're working in a warehouse, maybe they're an Amazon Whole Foods shopper. They have abilities in these jobs to be earning work accomplishments and achievements. We need to have conversations with them, because if they have them, we need to pull them into their resumes. I have a student who works at Amazon as a Whole Foods shopper, and we were talking, she's like, yeah, no, I don't have any work achievements. I go, but you have an app that you use. And she's like, yeah. And I go, you have metrics on it. She goes, yeah. She goes, I actually won a customer service award in August, and I got a cash bonus for it. It's like, that's your work achievement. We need to translate that and put it on your resume. She didn't even realize it. Call centers all have those quality control features and software. When those calls come into those call centers, it's tracking the quality. There's metrics. All of that is typically compiled monthly, and an account manager is going to give that to the client on a monthly basis to hold that client or vendor accountable. So those employees get metrics. My Amazon driver, and they're actually third-party workers, showed me her app. It tracks all the miles. It tracks her productivity. She had some work achievements. So we really want to talk to our candidates about work achievements, and if they don't have any, to think about opportunities, if they are currently working, how they can achieve that. And diving deeper into that, if it can be translated into a measurable metric, even better, right? Quick example is maintain 99.5% customer satisfaction rating across 6 months. They don't pull that information. Their manager gives them that information, because these metrics are tracked in certain positions, okay? Moving on to filling employment gaps. Yeah, so this one, we're obviously in the pandemic. This one has changed a little bit because of that. Everybody who can work is not working for a variety of reasons. Depending on the situation, encouraging and giving permission to accept those cashier and retail associate jobs. Sometimes they're coined as survival jobs. While you're job searching is completely acceptable. It's okay. That phrase that it's easier to get a job when you have a job is absolutely true. Employers value that. Encourage volunteer work if that's possible. Maybe they can't work right now because of a childcare situation, but maybe they can volunteer something on that resume. That volunteer work is so important. I think our population sometimes overlooks that, but employers really think it's highly attractive. It demonstrates drive and motivation. So these opportunities, also can give that opportunity to gain a work achievement, include maybe a measurable metric. More talking points during an interview. It's going to make them more attractive. And when they're currently working, they are less risk to hire, because they can see a previous employer and they can see, how long they've worked there. So that is super attractive for an employer. So let's move into the meat of this, though, the keywords. Some of you may have heard of these keywords before. It's where we're embedding specific words for skills and experience that are tailored to a job description. So in terms of that process, my recommendation is we start with a master resume, and then we customize per job posting to increase keyword matches, including titles. So I'm going to actually unpack that here with you. I've been involved in lots of webinars talking about keywords and this strategy, but we're going to unpack it and I'm going to show you what that looks like so you can take this to your students and you can help them transition to employment. And so this is a master resume. I have put this together. You'll notice there's no contact information for lack of space. I removed that for our purposes, but I included all the key information here. So, standard section headings are listed. Attention to detail, all the headings are the same font, they're all the same size. My bullets all match up. That's super important because that employer is going to look at this and go, okay, you know what, if I have to give them something that, they're going to do good work, because this is their first piece that they're looking at, right? So this is going to give them some confidence. Articulating that specific work accomplishment. This accomplishment on here is one of our students. Received Customer Service Award for delivering exceptional customer service in August of 2021. So that should go at the top of that employment experience, because that's what's going to draw the attention when they look at that specific work experience. So let's talk about this a little deeper. A summary. I am a huge advocate of a summary. When I pick up a resume, I want to know more about that candidate. I want to know what they want. I want to know what they bring to the table. This is super important for recruiters as well, because sometimes they pass these resumes around internally and they help out other recruiters. If this person's looking for a part-time position, they're not going to be pulled around into a full-time role, recruited into a full-time role. So this really helps the recruiter. It helps the hiring manager. This specific example is certifications listed. We want to bring in that national name, ABA, bank teller certification for this example. I used an acronym here. ATS systems are not smart enough to recognize acronyms. So I'm going to show you how we actually go through and tackle that problem, okay? So this is the training listed, education, American Bank Tellers Association. This is the association that the course was actually taken from, and that's usually all that candidates put. But we went further. We gave a description of that. Completed an ABA bank teller certificate. 35 course curriculum building a solid foundation of critical customer service skills. Wow. That is a lot of curriculum that they went through to obtain this bank teller certification. That's amazing. And then I have the high school equivalency listed on there as well, okay? Moving over to competencies and skills. This specific resume for this sample, this person just has Kohl's experience, which is fine. They have bank teller knowledge, but they do not have bank teller experience. So how do they look more attractive? We're going to pull in competencies and skills, and we're going to talk about, what they have gained from that course. They might not have experience with cash handling, check cashing deposits and withdrawals, but they have knowledge of it. So we're going to pull it into their resume so that hiring manager can see that they learned about it. Okay. Is that too small for everybody? Everybody see that? Okay.
A little too small.
Okay, I'll try. I'll enlarge it as we go on. I don't want to enlarge it right now because I'll cut off the bottom. You can see the file name. I have a recommended file name convention to use, and that's their first and last name, resume, and the year. Hiring managers. So this is going to be for that master resume, okay? And they're going to save this. This is that base resume. So let's move into unpacking. Sorry, I left that. The keywords. Let's talk about the keywords. And this is the important piece that we really need to help our students with. I pulled a job posting for a bank teller. This one's called the relationship banker. And our first step is to pull that job posting and highlight what we consider keywords, right? You're gonna just read it and determine what you think some keywords are. And I did that here with the red text. So this says overall success of a retail banking center. That term is not usually used, right? So it draws my attention to it. Revenue growth, that's important. Some of these position competencies that they listed: composure, listening skills, drive for results. So you get the idea. You pull this. Sometimes you can print it and highlight if it's easier. This is a long job posting, so it extended to the second page. But what I want to draw out here is under the position qualifications at the bottom, high school diploma or GED. What we have listed on the resume is not going to match. We need to include GED, and I'm going to show you what that looks like, okay? So as we unpack this, we're going to do it section by section. The left-hand side, I have the master resume content, and the right-hand side, I have the optimized resume content. So if we just look at the optimized side, I'm going to read through this. Experienced customer service professionals seeking a full-time relationship banker. That's the title of the position instead of bank teller, okay? And we're going to insert the company name, okay? They're going to want to see that because they took the extra time. They're going to love that. To utilize my transferable skills in a retail banking center instead of finance industry. Same thing, but now we're customizing it to that specific company. Passionate about partnership, collaboration, and engagement instead of cultivating relationships. Moving down, I'm excited to use my bank teller certification, knowledge, skills, and abilities to drive for results instead of drive customer satisfaction. Same thing. And impact the revenue growth instead of increase sales and revenue. It's just a different way of saying it, but we're gonna rise in that ATS system using this method. And the bottom, I have excellent composure, listening skills, and enjoy developing pure relationships. Only put this if it's accurate. You have to have integrity. You can't use it if you don't hold it or the candidate doesn't hold it, okay? We want to make sure we don't keyword pack this. We're not going to copy and paste entire sentences and lines. We're going to take keywords, key phrases, and put it together. ATS, the artificial intelligence is smart. It has gotten smarter because people were packing this with the actual job postings and using white text, and the artificial intelligence caught on. So if it's packed with, tons of the same phrases, just copied and pasted from the job posting, it's going to be smart enough and it's not going to be effective. Moving on, no changes with certifications, but you'll notice under education, I put in GED because now that's going to match in the actual job posting. The ATS is going to read that and be like, all right, they have the education qualifications. So that's important, okay? As I talked about acronyms, it's not smart enough to know what the real name of that is, right? So my strategy with the bank teller is I used ABA and I used American Bank Teller Association in 2 different spots, right? So if that job posting had ABA or American Banking Association in it, I would have picked it up either way. So it's not smart enough with the acronyms. So be mindful of that. And then when we move on to competencies and skills, and really what we're doing here is just looking at, how it's phrased different. It's the same thing, knowledgeable of transactional customer service, process deposits, withdrawals, payments, same thing as cash handling and check cashing. It's just said different. It's said in their way. Add value to customers. I added that phrase here. Compliance with applicable federal, state, and local laws. Added that because that's important and the candidate does know that. Pulling in the 1 year of customer service experience, computer and system data came from a different part of that job posting, but I positioned it here and they do have the 6-month of cashier experience. So they're gonna look super attractive in that ATS system. Okay. Work experience, same thing. When I talk about work experience, candidates have a hard time sometimes adding these action statements under their work experience and using this Kohl's retail sales associate, my recommendation is go to the job posting. You know, they're working there already, but go to the job posting and look at that information and pull it in. It's easy, as long as they've done all those tasks. So that is a strategy to create the tasks under work experience, because the candidates have a hard time with that often. But as we optimize that, we want to pull in those keywords, and you can see in my red text how I've done that here. Okay. I've moved things around a little bit too. I moved up process all cash handling to the second bullet under the optimized resume, because it becomes more important in that banking position. So you can do that as well. So as we look at the completion of this, right, what does it look like? Here's the optimized resume. You know, this is going to be very effective in an ATS system, and it's going to move that applicant up to the top. But they're going to rename this with a new file naming convention, which I have listed at the bottom. It's going to have their, you know, first, last name, resume. Now they're going to put the company name and the position name. And the reason for that is that recruiter is going to be, you know, impressed. Secondly, the candidate's going to be able to find it, right? When they get a call for the interview, they're going to pull up this resume and be able to speak to this resume. Okay. So this process is complete. You may be looking at this and going, Danielle, this is so high level. This is so much. My intention is to arm you with the knowledge on how the job search process works under an ATS. You know, our population already has so many barriers as they transition to employment. This is a great way to help advocate for them, give them this information, help them work through this process, because we need to help unlock that labor market for them. I come from a tuition reimbursement management program before I was here. So I have a lot of experience in a learning solutions department working with corporate clients. And if we can transition them to employment with a company that has a tuition reimbursement, they could have their education paid for or partially paid for potentially. Some of those policies are restrictive, but these companies cater to working adults. They need online degrees. And so they often offer online degrees for their employees. And there's so many strategies that these vendors are using to help working families. And so think about it that way, right? If we can get them to employment, perhaps they have a tuition reimbursement benefit to look at. Let's talk a little bit about some job application strategies that you may not be aware of. You know, this process is long. When they go in and do that online job application, some of them take forever. They have the information from the resume, but oftentimes they're asking for information that's not on their resume. So have them complete a job application worksheet that looks similar to this. You know, it has their previous supervisor's contact information, phone number, email. They don't remember that, right? If they can work and get this information on a worksheet and keep this worksheet to work off of, it's going to make them more successful as we help them transition. ATS systems often have that resume feature to upload it, where it parses it out. Be mindful of what the directions are, whether it's a Word or PDF document. Some of them are quirky and have their specifics. As they're evolving, they're accepting a lot of different file formats. Typically, Word documents were actually better to be read in an ATS than PDFs, even though PDFs are portable and favor that data integrity protection and so forth. So just make sure they read it so they can upload the correct format. And I don't know if you know anybody who's applied for a job online and has been automatically rejected pretty quick. It's you know, it's sad and depressing when that happens. But if that happens, it's because they got auto rejected because of a knockout question. The recruiters can go in and code these questions in an application to be knockout questions. And here's an example. Can you work weekends? If the applicant says no, on the right-hand side, you can see it's already selected auto reject the candidate not hired and send an email to them at the same time of rejection. Boom. They take that, they got 75,000 applications. This is how they remove them, right? To narrow that down. So it's kind of a pass or fail. So I always recommend be conservative. If it's about travel, job description doesn't mention travel, job application does. Say yes, get to that interview so you can talk about it. Because likely it probably isn't travel. It's probably a standard job application. Additionally, you never know. They might want to send you on that annual trip, right? Pre-COVID, some companies did that. So, companies sometimes reserve those knockout questions for years of experience, education level, a particular skill or tool. So it's important to know so they don't get knocked out right from the get-go. If it can be prevented with a simple, can you work weekends? And they say, no, let's really talk about that. What does that look like? Perhaps could we, work through that barrier? Could we answer yes to this so you can get to an interview? And what can we do to help solve that childcare issue or that transportation issue on a weekend, perhaps, right? And then let's look a little bit inside of an ATS system a little closer. This is just a dashboard. I kind of put this together as a generic dashboard. It just has a lot of telling information where a recruiter looks at it and they can tell a lot of information. You can tell on the side here that candidate 1 applied for the relationship banker position. The hiring manager's John Smith. This has been open 278 days. There's 10 new candidates, and candidate 1 submitted their job application 9 minutes ago. I'm going to go look at it, right? And so that recruiter can reject, advance, or provide more actions. But I wanted to show you the weight assigned to rank some answers. Sometimes, employers will have something not qualified and they assign a weight to it. So this position doesn't require a degree. So they're going to weight that high school diploma or GED higher because it matches the job. And a bachelor's degree is going to be, weighted a little bit less, master's a little bit less, and that PhD is going to be, totally knocked out and not qualified. I know we have one of our colleagues here yesterday, I saw posted in the chat that had a sister-in-law that removed PhD off of her resume. This is why they're getting
Saw that too. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it was yours. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So this is why. So I want you to know that there's some intuitive mechanics behind the scenes, and you might have to change how you're approaching jobs. And so all of this is a lot of long, hard work. Resume and job fatigue is real for both the candidate, the recruiter. It's a journey. It's okay to take a break. Consider maybe, even using a search firm or contract house, all different levels. There are ones for manual labor jobs as well as professional entry-level jobs. Sometimes you have to have 2 professional references to move into that professional level job, which is that entry-level business job. So that's a barrier for some of our candidates, but that's an option. But that is a great segue to power of networking. How do we avoid all of this? We want those resumes to bypass that ATS process and have a human look at it. 85% of our jobs are attained via networking. 15% are through these online job boards. Think about that. So if you can talk with a recruiter, or the candidate directly talks with the recruiter, they can be your advocates. Build that relationship, because 85% of these jobs are not even posted. They're coming through networking. They're coming through that employee referral network. This is powerful information, right? So how do we have candidates network? We have to help them build their professional network through requesting career informational interviews. It's one of the easiest forms to do. Professionals are usually very, very lovely and giving of their time to help through that. Encourage them. It's okay to reach out to recruiters online, even those national ones. If they're in a different state, it's okay. They're going to connect you with the right resource if they find your resume attractive, right? They're going to help you out. even reaching out to those HRVPs and directors, like that sounds crazy, but it's okay, because what happens in corporate, that just gets moved right down the chain of command, and they're going to move it to the VP is going to move it to director, director is going to move it to senior manager is going to hand it to the recruiter to take action. So it's okay to do that. You know, that base resume, that master resume, send it out to personal contacts and just, you know, let your personal network know, you know, I'm looking for a job. This is what I'm looking for. If you happen to know anything, please let me know, or feel free to pass my resume on. We have a student who did that. She netted 5 interviews and a job offer in the field she was looking for. She's been there a month, and I talked to her Wednesday, and she's like, Danielle, I have so much job satisfaction. So, you know, so proud of her for being able to do that. So that was, you know, through that employee referral network is how she got that job. And so that leads to building an employer network for our programs, right? So all of this was focused on the candidate and trying to advocate for that candidate. So you have that information, but us building this employer network is really imperative. We can get those resumes in front of employers for them. And so, you know, I think this is a big topic for our program, our industry. You know, how do we do that? So I came from managing university partnerships, securing these university partnerships for large corporations. Those conversations were never quick. They often required buy-in from top leaders. You know, I talked to presidents, I talked to board of directors, chancellors. You know, sometimes it took a year to gain that contract for that formal partnership, because there was a transfer of a discount money, right, involved in it. Because those leaders want to know, what is the return on an investment, right? That's what they're looking for. So as programs, we need to reach out to our employers, but it's okay not to have formal partnerships, right? It's okay to have these informal partnerships. And sometimes that's just getting the resume right in front of them. So first, identify your learner's needs. Start reaching out to a targeted set of employers in your area. Let them know about your program. Ask them, what are their hiring needs? And they're going to tell you, this is what I need. You're going to start those conversations. Lead with your best candidates first. You know, I'm able to send resumes directly to employers, which is really nice. And I actually get copied on it. I sent a resume to an organization. It took 3 weeks for it to move, but it started to move, and I got copied as it got moved throughout their organization. And, you know, we talked about location, and the location didn't work out, and like, do we have anything else? So I was copied on all of that. It's incredible. So, you know, just start reaching out and calling, you know, cold calling, it's okay. You know, they'll be thrilled to talk to you, you know, in terms of that. They want to fill their talent gaps. Also, I get some great feedback on our candidates that I necessarily wouldn't do through, you know, the actual ATS system applying online. So sometimes starting out with those smaller firms, they're easy to work with initially. The downside is they don't have as many openings, many positions, right? But you can start to work with those employers, and then they have associations that they work with, and the word of mouth spreads that way. Also look for organizations with growth strategies. CVS announced 25,000 new positions. They just recently, a huge growth strategy. Amazon as well. I think Starbucks did prior to that. So what I like to do, you know, those sometimes are those survival jobs that we talk about, but I like to reframe that. You're gaining coworkers, and coworkers are so important, because it's going to help you on the next interview or the next job you're looking for, because you're building these relationships. I have learned so much from my coworkers over my career. It is absolutely incredible. I learn from every single one of them every single day. And you know, starting out in these entry-level positions, you know, whether it's a warehouse, you know, whether it is, you know, driving a truck or whatever it may be, you're learning from your coworkers, and there's no better experience than that. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed, these strategies for candidates to try to recruit that employer, right? That recruiter, with our help, advocating for them and setting them up for success. And then, rounding that out with building out our employer network. So I'm sorry, we have like 5 minutes left. I'd love to take any questions that came through our chat, Whitney.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say there's a few. Would it ever be a negative to include vaccination status on a resume?
Yeah, so hot topic, right? I guess it depends on the industry. My recommendation is research that company. If that company is mandated, then and they have that status, then include it. If you're not sure, leave it off. It's okay. It's emerging territory, so it's going to change. So I just wanted to get it on the top of your mind, because you might start hearing about it in the future. So I think it just depends on the organization, and if you're iffy, leave it off.
Someone's asking if they can use these slides with students. Could you post them in the, I don't know, if you send them to Patrick, he can put them within this presentation?
Of course.
Cool. Do you change the color on the actual resume, or is that just so it stands out to us?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I just did that so you could identify what I changed. Typically in real life, I'm highlighting it with a highlighter, but I wanted to make sure you could see that. So no, we want it to be all black text on the resume when it's complete. That was a great question.
And Michael says, best overview of ATS that I've ever seen.
Aw, thank you, Michael. That means a lot.
Any advice about tests given when completing the application? What would you do in this situation type of questions?
I'm not sure if I 100% understand about tests given.
Like sometimes there's like, I know when I've posted jobs, like on, I think Indeed, you can post a little quiz thing about their employability skills or things like that.
Yeah, so in terms of that employer, if they've used Indeed, they might have those assessments. They have those assessments for a reason, because they want to see the top candidates out of that. Some of those are difficult, right? I've seen the bank teller ones, they're difficult. On that note, gaining partnerships, sometimes you get to see some of their assessments. We have a bank that let us take their assessments so we could see what it looked like. It's tough. So that's so valuable. So if they post an assessment, I recommend they take it, because they're probably not going to move on in the job process. There might be a time sensitive piece to that too. They have to take it in X amount of days. Sometimes those are surprises and you don't know it. My strategy that I use is I go and I apply for the job myself, so I can kind of look and see what I think can happen, right? That's how I got a call from CVS recruiter immediately. And I said, I am so sorry, I apologize. I'm not actually applying for your job, but I'm so glad that you called me in 30 minutes after I passed that virtual job assessment.
Yeah, it's good to know to pass on to clients.
Yeah, I actually complete those.
Heather says, oh, go ahead.
I have a question. I was once helping somebody put an application to Home Depot, and there were questions. One of them was, which one are you likely to do? Steal from the company, take something home, or some other bad thing? Or like, what is that testing? Like,
Yeah,
what do we do? What do we do?
Yeah, some of those are so tricky. And what'll happen is when they ask you a tricky question like that, you often will get it again, rephrased differently, and you're in the same situation with a second or third question that's like that. You do the best you can, because what they're looking for is, the social or the psychological mindset, right? What are you going to do in that situation? Obviously, they don't want their employees to steal, but they're not giving you the best answer, right? There's not a best answer. So you're going to do the best you can on those and try to be as consistent as possible, because the question's probably going to pop up again.
What about leaving it empty? I like one is worse than the other.
Yeah, we don't want to leave it empty. It's not my recommendation because if it's not complete, you might not be moved on in the system.
There's a question about your email. I don't know if you want to jot your email into the chat box. There's also ways to connect through the Whova app. So if you guys want to go find Danielle Barrett on Whova, if you have more questions. And then I don't know if you don't mind sharing your email.
Oh, I'm putting it in right now.
Awesome, thanks. So we'll leave this open for a little bit so that people can see that. Lots of thank yous in the chat, lots of big takeaways that we can use right away in our program. So thank you so much, Danielle. I hope everybody enjoyed the conference. We would really love your feedback if you wanted to reach out to Patrick and just let him know your thoughts on the conference. There's a place where you can rate every session, which is also helpful for us as the board as we're looking at the Spring Institute and next year's conference as well. So go on and rate all the sessions that you attended. And then don't forget the sketch form was emailed out today. My advice is to do it today, but you have until November 8th. So sketch form. I hope everybody enjoyed the whole conference and the networking and everything. I know I enjoyed talking to all of you and learning so much. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.